Welcome to Running for Real, a global community with a shared love and curiosity for running. Together we reconnect with the reasons why we love to run and discover ways it helps us become better people. Whether it's the quiet moments of a morning run while the rest of the world still sleeps, or befriending the strangers next to you at the start line of a race, we are here to connect with others who see running as the common thread that weaves our lives together. Come join me, Tina Muir, as I talk with people from all walks of life, united by a love of running. Hello, my friends, and welcome to episode 426 of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you for joining me. I am excited that you are here and really excited for this guest today because 2 months ago, we didn't even know each other. She showed up at one of my events. I was so grateful to every person that came to that event. You're going to hear more about it. And then I looked her up and I was honestly surprised I hadn't heard of her before. But she's doing some incredible things. And this episode, my awe and what would be the word? My awe and just inspiration gathered from her went so many levels deeper after this conversation today. I am so excited to welcome Nadia Ruiz to the podcast today, also known as Iron Girl Nadia on Instagram. The way she looks at the world, the way she connects to her why, the grounding that she has despite being a public figure is truly beautiful. And I hope we can all take a little more of this in keeping ourselves distant from the validation that we all seek and instead finding a way to ground ourselves. So let's go meet Nadia. You've heard me talking about Tracksmith for years, 5 years to be exact, because those same items that I was given 5 years ago are still lasting the same, even though they've done hundreds of runs, thousands of miles. And recently they've been handling sweaty bike workouts, especially when I'm on the stationary trainer, as well as even swims. I've done a few swims in my items. The quality, the durability is lasting beautifully. And that is because Tracksmith takes so much pride in what they make. As I've mentioned before, the number one thing you can do environmentally when it comes to your running clothes is to buy high quality items that last. I am a big fan of many of the items that are bestsellers, including the Session Speed shorts. Those are my favorite shorts of all time. I love all the tanks. I really just love every one of them. I wear them almost every day. I'm wearing one of those tanks, as well as the Session short tights. You can go check those out. And I encourage you to use code TINANEW for $15 off your order of $75 or more. That's use code TINANEW, TINANEW at tracksmith.com to get yourself that special offer. Get yourself some quality items, make them last. You will be amazed with the quality, the durability, and they're going to look good too. Go check it out at tracksmith.com. Nadia, welcome to the Running for Real podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited that you are here.
Thank you so much, Tina, for having me. Me too. I'm glad we were to connect.
Yes, and I loved that I first got to meet you probably a month ago now, maybe a little bit longer in person. And it was that was such a special morning for me. For listeners, Nadia and some friends came to the plugging event I was hosting in Chicago. And it was the first time we'd really tried anything the day after. And so I was curious. It wasn't a huge group, and that was okay. The day after is kind of a strange time, but I loved that you and I think 2 or 3 of the other people had done the marathon the day before, which surprised me. Now I know why. At the time, I was like, wow, that's confident for people to be coming post marathon when they can barely bend down. But for you, your body is probably a little more used to kind of getting on with things the day after marathons. We will go into why that is later in the episode. But so we met just over a month ago, and I looked you up afterwards and really wanted to hear about your story. There were a few things that really stood out to me. And I'm going to begin by being a little bit honest with you in a way I didn't warn you of beforehand, in that when people in the past had said to me that they were going to let their teenager, or they wanted their teenager, or their teenager had done a marathon, I kind of twitched, because I was like, oh, that poor child is never going to run past age 19. You have defied everything I ever suspected about that, having done your first marathon at 14, and we'll talk about that, and now having done 158. So I want to begin by maybe speaking to that piece. Have you had other people meet you with resistance with the fact of how early you started your marathon, or maybe it was at the time?
No, I definitely not recently, because it's just more commonplace now. You see it younger and younger. What I do see, though, is if they are younger teens or children running marathons or ultra distances at a more competitive level, then there is a little bit more controversy behind that. And I could see, and I observe it to kind of see what one side says and what the other side says. But I started running about 28 years ago, and social media was nowhere near what it was. It was pretty much non-existent, basically, at that point. And you wouldn't connect that same way. The messages weren't being propagated that way. So when I did my first one at age 14, literally only my intimate community knew, my local running club knew. You don't post, there was no posting it. And it's almost like it's ignorance is bliss. You don't really only would hear maybe news articles like, oh, there's someone that's 10 or 14 or 12 running in another country, but it wasn't commonplace. So there wasn't anything negative back then, or currently. Maybe I see it in others, but not me personally.
Is there, I know it's obviously just hard to comprehend, but is there a part of you that's grateful that none of this was around, for that reason, that you just kind of could do it innocently because you wanted to do it, not for the social media side of it?
Oh, social media. Yeah. I mean, it's back then it was just different, and very, very, very different. There's a lot of pros and cons to social media. As we know, we get to connect and network and find the right people, but we have to filter through a lot in order to find the right connections and the right messaging. So that is definitely a skill and a practice, and we have to protect our own mental health while we're doing that and be with the right intentions. And so it's a continuous evolving and adaptive process, me being in social media now, working in social media, having a public persona. But I started out without that. So I think that's kind of where my skill set comes from, is just not having to grow up with it, not starting in it. It's a very, very different culture. My background is in teaching high school biology. And so when I was teaching teens at that point, cell phones were already present and social media was already present, and it's already different. And it's different now because that was only 20 years ago. So definitely I'm grateful that how we evolved through it.
Yeah. And so if you don't mind sharing, I know you've shared this a lot, but you ran that first marathon with your dad. You still do a lot of adventures with your dad, and it's just so amazing to see. How did that conversation come about to do, I'm going to do a marathon age 14?
So I started out in middle school, kind of becoming aware of marathoning being able to be done within the community. So again, there's no social media. There's no way to connect and find out. You just kind of find out word of mouth. And I found out my middle school teacher was running a marathon, and he was tall, skinny, fit. He taught math, and he also did PE, and he was running the marathon. I was like, I didn't know that us regular people can do that. I thought it was only reserved for professional runners. So that's kind of where the seed was planted. And then I was doing homework one night, and I saw on TV the Ironman World Championship. And I was like, what is this? What is going on here? People are swimming and biking and running from sunrise to sunset into the dark. And I was just entranced. That was where I got was in awe, inspired. And again, I've shared this before, but I have complete respect and complete for the professional runners and the elites out there. But my heart was touched by the people like you and me who are out there overcoming battles in their life, overcoming divorce, overcoming loss, doing it for their children, doing it for whatever powerful reason that they created a goal for. And that touched my heart. And I was only 12, 13 years old at the time. And I was like, wow, I cannot believe that human beings can do this, that are balancing family, life, work, and it seems like they're doing it all. And so I was like, one day I want to do an Ironman. I did the research, realized it was a very expensive sport. I come from an immigrant family. I was like, okay, so I got to wait. And then another thing was that there's age barrier. You had to actually, even back then until this date, you had to be 18 to register for a full Ironman distance event. So I was like, okay, I'll wait. And I naturally thought you can just like, well, marathon word was already planted. I was like, what seems natural to me is just to sign up for one of the sports and just start out that way. So that's how I signed up for the marathon. And it was 1998, 99 when I just started high school. It's my freshman year. I signed up for cross country. I found that I had this endurance engine inside me. And I was like, okay, I think it's possible. If I can run 3 to 5 miles, why not run a marathon? So I literally had not run more than 5 miles and all I had was one cross country season behind me when I sat my parents down and I had that conversation with them. And it was just a few weeks before the LA Marathon, which comes every March.
So wait, you'd registered, but you hadn't told them?
No, yeah, I registered. So back then you could actually, print out your mail registration from online and you mail it in with a check and you mail it in or you drop it off or in an envelope, all like old school. So that's how I did it. I sent it in and I sat my parents down and I told them, I signed up for the LA Marathon. I'm doing it. I don't remember if they actually asked. They probably do ask for consent. So I might have just snuck in my registration at that point. But that's why I was telling my parents what I had done. And my mom was shocked. She's just like, what are you doing, mija? My dad was literally lost for words. And he's like, I'm proud of mija. You're never going to do that? I'm going to do it with you. So he ended up signing up and
Where was he in terms of, was he a runner at that point?
No. So a lot of people thought that my parents inspired me or my dad inspired me to start running, but it was actually the reverse. I inspired my parents to start running. So my dad signed up for his first marathon at age 40. My mom was inspired by us. And the following year, she signed up for her first marathon at age 40 as well. And then my brother and my sister signed up for the following year for their first marathon. And so it was a little trickle effect of just because there's this, as you know, this joy that comes out and this passion that comes out. Then you share it with people that you love. And it's I want a little bit of that. I want to feel what you're feeling. And so let's go ahead and sign up for this marathon. And that's kind of how the first one started.
Wow. And so share with us maybe one or two moments in that marathon that stand out to you.
The first one?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the two major moments is the low and the high. The biggest low that I had from that one was when I hit the wall. You hear the proverbial wall when you hit it, it's 18, 19, 20, whatever it is. But I hit it 11, 12. All the adrenaline was gone. All the excitement was gone. And you hit those middle miles and just everything hurt from the waist down. And then it started to go up in my upper body. And I was like, what is going on? Why am I starting to cramp and this spasm and just feeling like everything was shutting down. So here I thought I was a hungry child and thinking that I was invincible, thinking I could do anything. And I felt defeated. I felt physically defeated. And then I felt emotionally defeated. So I sat down on the curb crying of embarrassment that I let myself down, that I feel like I let my dad down because he started this journey with me. And my dad just kneeled next to me. He's like, mija, if you believe you can do it, then I believe you can do it. And we're going to do this together. So let's do it one foot in front of the other. We put our mind to it and we can do anything. I was like, okay. So I've learned a lot of mental fortitude and a lot of mental strength from my dad. And we took one step after the other and still with same amount of physical pain, but a different mindset at that point. You reshape what you're thinking, you reshape the thoughts that are coming in and you start to allow that to propel you forward. And so the next moment that was just a high was when we crossed that finish line. I was 14 years old. My dad was 40. It was our first marathon we got to share together, step by step together. He grabbed my hand and waved it up high like we were champions of the race. There are thousands and thousands of runners, but when you cross that finish line, it doesn't matter. You share that moment and you feel like you won. You feel invincible. And the biggest thing that what I try to tell my community and try to tell my athletes and even my students is when you cross that line of that first finish line, whatever it is, a 5K, 10K marathon, whatever it is, ultra, it's that feeling of empowerment. It's I did this. I was able to show up for myself, push myself to arrive to the starting line, arrive to the finish line. And it's just an overwhelming feeling that then translates to other areas of your life that you just want to keep going.
And keep going, you did. But no, you're right. Like, there really are so few situations in life where, you know, as you said, you get to feel that sense of, this is for me, I did this. And, you know, unless you are some kind of athlete in most other things, you really don't get that sensation from anything. So, yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that. And that is so, so true. So then take us after that moment. Your dad, I'm assuming you both were very sore the next day, but kind of you'd got the bug, for lack of a better words, in terms of like you wanted to do more of this. Was it right away you signed up for the next one?
Yeah, I wanted to. I definitely wanted to. I fell in love with the sport. I fell in love with the distance. I fell in love with then the process. I'm like, what else can I do to improve? What else can I do to help myself, give myself the edge to become a better athlete and become a better, yes, marathoner, but an athlete overall? Because I knew that since I was doing cross country and track and water polo in high school, that I still wanted to test myself and see like, how well can I do at the 5K? How well can I do the 2 mile and the 3 mile and the 400 or 800, whatever it was. And so I wanted to sign up immediately for the next marathon. And for me, I thought only the LA Marathon existed. Again, it took a little bit more research to figure out like, wow, there's marathons all over the country. There's marathons all over the world. And it's just, there's a playground to play in and to explore, to then test yourself. And I was going to sign up for a few, but my coaches in high school actually encouraged me not to. They said, Nadia, look, there's a talent in you. There is definitely a fire in you. And let's go ahead and see how fast you can go at the high school level distances. Let's test out your short distance, your middle distance. The marathon will always be there. And we're not telling you not to. We understand this passion and fire that you have. And yes, we send you off basically with a blessing to do the LA Marathon once a year, but don't sign up for more. Our recommendation is not to. Let's focus on your speed first and then build your base. And then when you get to the collegiate level, then you can explore to see, do I want to go to the collegiate level and compete? Or do I want to go into the marathon distance? Like, give yourself the options. Don't limit yourself to like right now, just jumping in all in and explore where are your talents. And literally with athletic development, that is important. Variety is important so that you can explore to see where definitely your strongest suits are and where your weaknesses are. And I had just started running. It's literally my first year. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna listen. So I only did one marathon a year throughout high school and also throughout college. Things changed for a different direction. I really focused on my academic development. I really focused on developing my profession, and I wanted to go into, first it was public health and it was medicine. And then I was intrigued always. I've always been intrigued with science and physiology and kinesiology. And so I was like, you know what? Let me try to mesh the two. That I love to teach. I love to learn. So I went into teaching. I got my master's in education and my bachelor's in biology, and I taught high school biology for 10 years. So while I was doing that in college, I still kept one a marathon a year. It was LA. Problem was that I didn't take care of my health. And I started to eat very poorly. I started to become very sedentary. And that became a trickle effect. My mental health was affected. My emotions were affected. I felt like I lost my sense of identity. And even though everything was great on paper, even though I was getting accolades after accolades at UCLA and publishing and just opportunity after opportunity was opening up because of just my work ethic. I'm a very high work ethic. Something was missing. That fire, that light of just excitement. And I missed playing. I missed the sport. And I had already got a taste of it. And so I knew that it wasn't just so much about being able to be part of the sport, but also I saw my health just dwindle. And it really became, I avoided it. I avoided addressing it within myself. Instead, I hid it behind sweaters. And I mean, through summers, I would wear hoodie after hoodie after hoodie, and I gained weight. I gained 40 pounds across my undergrad years. And when I was in grad school, just came to a point where when I was going upstairs and I just winded, I couldn't even hurry to get to class. I was winded. I was like, how can I be a model of medicine, or how could I be a doctor and prescribe anything or recommend anything, or even public health when I can't even take care of myself right now. And it was hurting me inside. And so I felt very invisible and very empty inside. And so that's where I decided that I needed to really take care of myself again, take care of my health, take care of my emotions, and the building of my profession was there. So I just like, I need to learn how to balance it. I can't go too extreme into my academics or into my profession. I can't go too extreme into sports. I have to find that right balance where it's all in harmony. So thankfully during my last year of my master's, I really, really devoted myself to eating healthier again. And the biggest thing was I developed eating disorders while I was an undergrad, and it became very dark, and I had to reestablish and reshape my relationship with food. That's the biggest thing, because I would always yo-yo diet. I went into bulimia. And this is something that you suffer in darkness. You suffer behind closed doors. Nobody knows that. Nobody knew back then. And even though you know the risks associated with it, and I knew then I need to take care. I need to fix this. So reshaping my emotions, reshaping my mindset of like, I need to look at food as not my poison. It's my medicine. It's my fuel. It's something that I need to nourish my body with. And everything I consume, from whether it's auditory, whether it's visual, or when we're consuming and we're breathing in, it has to be something that I want to nourish my body, my mind, and my soul. So I reshifted and changed a few things, and I was able to lose 20, 25 pounds of it. I was never able to lose the rest, but that's when I had a new woman's body. So it was no longer in my teen body. I was now in a woman's body. And that's where I learned to be strong. I learned to embrace my woman's body and say, how strong can I be with this now new frame? And that means embracing who I was, embracing what I felt, and sport helped me do that. It helped me reshape a positive relationship with food. It helped me reshape a positive relationship with my body image, because so many of us at different stages of our life suffer with body dysmorphia. What we see in the mirror, we just are so judgmental of ourselves and think that everyone else is looking at us with the same judgmental eye. And sport helps kind of fix that for me a little bit. And I was so grateful that I was able to find the sport again. And that's where I started marathoning more. Once I finished grad school, then I gave myself the gift to explore new marathons. And I signed up for 5 the following year, then 7, then 10, and then it just took off from there.
Did you hear the exciting news that Precision Fuel and Hydration is now the nutrition sponsor of California International Marathon, CIM? That's where I ran my PR. I love that race, and I know so many of you do too, and now they are working together. It is a dream for me. I am so excited to see it and hear about it. Now, with Precision, I've been talking about them for a long time with you. I've told you how their gels, you don't get the flavor fatigue because they have this very neutral flavor, the original that is. And then the mint and lemon is very like palate cleansing. Mint is also really good for you to have during a struggle part of a race. And it tastes really good, especially the two together is a very refreshing mix when you have those chews. So I've told you about my love for the chews and the gels and how easy they go down. It is not a kind of uncomfortable taking it down. I really do enjoy them. And also the hydration. I love their pH 1000 that I use every day in my drinks to make sure I am topped up with electrolytes. And as I am getting back into training, I'm excited that I'm using more of these again, and I can get back into training so that I can have my next race be fueled by Precision and make sure that I can knock it out of the park, because they really get it. And if you don't know how much of each thing you should be taking, how many carbs, how many gels, how much electrolytes, they have a free fuel and hydration planner that can figure it all out for you. Absolutely free. You can also have a free 20-minute consultation if you like. There's lots of links in the show notes, but I would encourage you to go to precisionfuelandhydration.com/Tina. That's going to give you a 15% discount code. You can also use code Tina sent me. Go check it out, precisionfuelandhydration.com/Tina, or use code Tina sent me to get 15% off, and go check out that fuel and hydration planner. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. And definitely a the topic of body dysmorphia is one that has come up often. I don't know how much you know about my past, but it is one of the things I'm known for in the space. Was quitting the elite level back in 2017 because I had such an unhealthy relationship with my body. I hadn't had a period in 9 years. And since then, I've, been on this journey of my own, but also kind of become someone that people come to learn and have these conversations to move past their own struggles. And I love that you were actually able to take running and make it a positive part of your recovery. Quite often we hear it kind of almost ends up being the other way, in that people like use it as a tool to kind of mask what they're doing, because I'm like, it's like, oh, I'm just running. So how did you get to that place of where you were able to have peace with it, knowing that it was technically burning calories, which could easily set you back down the path of like being so hyper aware of it again?
It was right when I started training for triathlon. So when I finished grad school, I remembered the goal. I told myself, why did I start running? Why did I sign up for that first marathon? And it was because I was inspired to do my first Ironman when I was 12, 13 years old. So I reminded myself of that childhood goal. And I said, okay, let's go ahead and now sign up for your first Ironman. Give yourself a set of 2 years after finishing grad school and go after that goal. And so it was being multidisciplinary again and teaching myself to be an athlete again, not just run or not just go work out, but actually train with purpose and train to fulfill myself. But it was kind of redefining and reminding myself of the goal and finding joy in movement every day, because I definitely can. I see it. I see it when you explained that. I see it in collegiate athletes a lot, where that body dysmorphia comes. And, I almost went down that route. I almost went to be a collegiate level, and that could have been me too, but I went the other way and ended up gaining weight, and body dysmorphia came that way. And so that sense of empowerment came through my own body and having that positive relationship with the swimming, biking, and running. And I was like, wow, like I don't need to be, this is what's so sometimes crazy, is like, I thought I was quote unquote fat or big when I was in high school, and I was 15, 20 pounds lighter. I was like, why did I think that? Why? Because I was comparing myself. That was a problem. I was still running strong. I was still going to CIF. I was still going to state. But yet, because I wasn't, quote unquote, as slim and slender as the next, I was like, there's something wrong with me. I'm too big. There's something wrong with me. And that's that mindset, and that internal dialogue is what is definitely detrimental to ourselves. And we have to continuously address that, because it doesn't just happen to teens or people in their 20s or 30s or 40s. This is an ongoing conversation that we have within ourselves. Yep. So I had to allow the voice to be louder that was telling me, you are strong with your womanly hips. You are strong now in this new body. And it didn't matter what pace I was, because no matter what, and I was literally telling myself this, like, there's always someone faster than you. There's always someone slower than you. There's always going to be someone smarter than you. There's always going to be someone behind you. It doesn't matter. You are you where you are, and you're beautiful the way you are. You're strong the way you are, and enjoy this moment, because this moment's not always going to last. And continuously telling myself that allowed me to find blessing in presence, and that's where it allowed me to be like, oh, I love this endurance thing. I love the sport, and just kept going and going after every challenge that I could.
So then, with this, you obviously found a really meaningful and deep connection to the sport and what it brought to you, and it sounds like you still have that. How have you been able to hold on to that as you have started to become a public figure, as you started to get to these numbers of marathons or numbers of BQs that people put a lot of worth into, put a lot of respect into, and therefore pressure into? How have you kept a hold of that meaning behind what you're doing when the temptation to make it about other things is, I'm assuming, still there?
The biggest answer is my parents. My inspiration has been my parents. The reason why I started has been my parents. The reason why I keep going is my parents. And I shared this journey, and I am so grateful I could share this journey now for 28 years with my father. But this is why it's so important to me to help pass a message and propagate a message of health and wellness, not just in our physicality, but also in our mental and emotional health, is because both of my grandmothers passed away from type 2 diabetes. Both of my grandfathers passed away from prostate cancer and health ailments. I come from a developing country. My parents are immigrants and in Ecuador. And my mom is one of 8. My dad's one of 8. All are obese or overweight and have health chronic problems due to lifestyle choices. And we can empower ourselves through our lifestyle choices that we make every single day to have a more higher quality of life. And so the biggest thing that once my grandparents were sick and then passing away was my parents thought that that's our future. That's going to be in our future and going to ail us. I was like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. Just because so I wanted to use my parents almost as a ways to help transform their life and become healthier. And my parents right now are in their mid 60s and they look like they're in their let's say early 50s, late 40s. They look so great for their age because they're moving, they're active, they have to work at it. Nothing is, and people say, oh, it's genetics. Like you look young because of your genetics, or you look this way, or you're athletic because of your genetics. I go, no, I actually have to work really hard at it. But to me, it's important. It's priority. Because if I can model this within myself, then I can help inspire my parents to continuously be healthy. And it took years. Mm-hmm. It took years while I was researching sports nutrition while I was in high school, was to teach my mom how to cook in different ways and how to encourage my dad to make better choices when he would go out and not go into temptations that are always available to all of us. And I love temptations. I love the bad food choices, but I mindfully, again, it's like that relationship with food. Like I want it to nourish me. I want it to be a positive. I mean, and I'm not 100% perfect either. Like I make my mistakes here and there, and it's important to have a little bit of like treats here and there too. But it's again having that healthy balance. And so my parents are primarily the reason why I was so passionate about transforming their lives to be healthier, because I saw I could do it within myself as an athlete. And I go, I think this can also help people just in general. You don't have to be competitive. You don't have to be aiming for, world record, a Boston qualifier, or an elite level. You can transform your own life with sport, with running, with triathlon or ultras or whatever it is we choose to do. It could be even yoga. It could be mobility. It could be Zumba. It could be a number of things. But when we make these daily choices every day to incorporate healthy practices, it can help transform our lives. And so that has allowed me to continue to stay in the sport for 28 years. As the sport has evolved in the last 3 decades, it definitely has, especially as we see in social media. But it's always reminding myself of my roots and always reminding myself why I started this journey. And then, of course, that why, or that reason why I started is the same. And what continuously helps me to stay in it is just to kind of refocus myself every year and say, like, okay, what is it do I want to achieve this year? And what message do I want to pass along? And I mean, as you know, it's like sometimes as we grow older and we see our parents age, they almost become our children. Mm. And we look at them and we see them as our kids and we see their joy. It brings us joy. So if I can see my dad happy running, it brings me so much happiness. If I can see my mom happy doing yoga and eating a wholesome meal and feeling great, it makes me happy. And so that's where I talk about like quality of life. It doesn't have to be pursuing PRs. It doesn't have to be going the 100-mile distance. It literally is the little things that we do every day that can give us a higher quality of life.
Does that act as a buffer for you with your social media presence, knowing that your ego could easily get tangled up in it, that you're, reading into what people are saying, good or bad? Ultimately, you keep bringing it back to your family and those little moments.
Yes, sometimes we can allow ourselves some negative noise to get too loud. Mm-hmm. And I learned this probably, we're going on maybe like 11, 12 years ago when things got really loud, got really big for me on social media. And I had broken a world record. And then it's strange. It's really strange to hear negative noise when these people don't know you. Mm. And it can hurt. Words can hurt. And I didn't understand it. I still was really new to social media. I was like, I'm just sharing my joy and my passion. Like, what is it that I'm doing wrong? And what is it that I did to you to for you to come and attack me. And it was really wild and crazy. Thankfully, I had a couple mentors come and reach out to me and say, Nadia, like, you can stay silent and you can be quiet and get away from the sport and not pass your message along. But if you want to pass your message along, you're going to have to take the good and the bad. But equally, as we take the good and the bad, you have to understand, like, don't allow the good to uplift you too much, because if you do, then when the bad comes along, it's also going to hurt you and bring you down. You have to take both and understand that whatever somebody is saying, whether it's good or bad, that's coming from a place where they're at. Mm-hmm. And if it's a negative thing, there's something going on with that person if they're saying something negative. And so you can't take it personal. And in a way, they like my mentors back then, over a decade ago, told me that you kind of have to grow a little bit of a thicker skin. If you really want to share your message, if you really want to make an impact, and if you're really passionate about what it is deep down, it's not just you about sharing your running accomplishments. It's you about trying to pass a message of helping people transform their own lives. And that is where I'm coming from. And that's where I started. And so if I want to do that, I do have to, yes, talk about my accomplishments, because that gives me a platform and a leverage to be listened to be heard, but always going back to what is it deep down inside that brings me passion? And what is it that I want to help others? How do I want to help others feel this feeling that I feel?
Thank you for sharing that. It's really, you really are one of the best examples I've come across of someone who just is so grounded in your reason of why you're doing this, beyond those, validation points that we can easily get stuck on. So then when someone uses the word, like, you're an influencer, like, as someone who, I think my parents still describe what I do as, she writes blogs and stuff. How does it feel to you when people boil down all the things the good you put out in the world, or the things you do, into an influencer? Like, how does that sit with you?
I will admit, I had a problem with the word in the beginning. And it literally, for me, the line was demarcated, and there was a difference pre-COVID and post-COVID. So pre-COVID, there wasn't really I didn't feel like I was part of the influencer umbrella. Even though I was making an impact, I was, quote unquote, influencing. Mm-hmm. However, it was very different. My messaging was just different, and the space was different as well. And then post-COVID, all of us were enveloped into that umbrella, and almost all of us were just put into this negative light. And I was trying to come from a place of trying to educate people of the word. Like, there's a difference between if you're a writer, if you're a content creator, if you're an author, if you're like these are just platforms where we are sharing our voice, we're sharing our message. Mm-hmm. And I always saw myself in the past, prior to social media, as I wanted to be a role model. I can be a role model as a female, as a Latina, as coming from an immigrant family from very humble beginnings, as one who's very strong and passionate about education, and one who's very strong and passionate about public health. Like, these are things that are passionate to me, and I want to use these as messaging to help be a role model in these spaces. And so I always saw myself as that. I was a teacher, an educator, coach, and learner and student at the same time. So when the influencer word came, I was like, that's not me. I took a huge offense to it. I did. I would used to even fight my partner on it. When he would use it, he's like, well, essentially, you are an influencer. I'm not an influencer. Don't use that word with me. But it took a while for me to warm up to the word and to understand. Again, it's going back, there's some people who use the word not in a negative connotation. It's just lack for a better description than saying, outside of the influencer, what really are you? You're an educator, you're a podcaster, you're a YouTuber, you're a content creator, you create film, you create video, you create whatever it is. But we're all creators, we're all storytellers in a way. And I'm just telling the story of myself. I'm telling the story of my family. I'm telling a story in order to help educate others so that they can hopefully see what pieces can I use from their stories to try to apply to my own life and see how can I change things. And that's creating an influence. And so it was me personally changing how I saw the word in order for me to accept it and allow people, when they say it, whether they say it in a good in a positive connotation or a negative connotation, now it's just okay, no problem. I'll just take it what it is. Almost like I've created a little bit of thicker skin with that word. that if someone says it, like, okay, I'm not offended. Like it doesn't matter however you're using it. I am an influencer,
Yes.
but I know deep down, I am making a positive influence as a role model.
Thank you to Runner for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. You have heard me talking about Runner. It's the #1 rated running coaching app in the world. They are on a mission to make running as easy, effective, and as enjoyable as possible. You heard Rob talking about this, how Runner was his companion. It helped him to get ready for Berlin, how he ended up running a PR after many years of not running marathons. Runner is really going to take you to where you want to go. Yes, I am still returning from my injury, from my surgery, which means I am not ready yet to jump on a runner plan, but I am excited to do that. They create personalized plans for all abilities, ranging from those of us who are starting our running journeys from scratch, as I will be soon, or if you are even from the very beginning of your journey as a couch to 5K runner. They go all the way up to elite marathoners, and the plans are built by Olympic athletes, expert coaches, and they are not only going to have your runs on there, but your strength and conditioning plans. It's going to have integrated mobility and Pilates plans. It syncs with your calendar. And best of all, you can connect with other like-minded runners in the community section. So you have heard myself talking about Runner. You've probably heard other people talking about Runner. It is fantastic to have these personalized running plans just for you. They use AI to tell you what it suggests that you should be doing next. You can also reject or accept those suggestions as it goes through the training plan. It's going to sync with your devices, give you all kinds of support. And you, as a friend of mine, can get yourself 2 weeks for free by using code running for real. That's running, FORREAL, running for real. And that's going to get you 2 weeks off a plan with Runner. Go check it out. Rob loves it. I love it. I can't wait to use it. And it is well worth a look. Look up the Runner app, RUNNA. That's RUNNA. Go check it out and use code running for real. Yes, you absolutely are. And actually, I was going to share this earlier when you were talking, and I didn't, but I'm definitely going to now because you've made me think of this twice. I am listening to Michelle Obama's latest book. I can't remember what it's called. The Light We Give, something like that. But I'm listening to her book, and today, actually, she quoted her father, and she's even named one of the chapters after him, which says, "No one can make you feel bad if you feel good about yourself." And that's so simple. But it's so true. And you are like a living embodiment of that in every sense of like, you do it, you feel good about who you are. You've clearly done the work to be who you are and comfortable in your own skin and what you do in the world. And so while I only read that today and it's like fresh in my mind, it just, you embody that so much of, and I just found that so profound. It's so true. So then, you mentioned there you're a Latina, you are a woman, you are someone who, has had to work really hard to get to where you're at. How do you feel with the additional pressure or maybe expectation, or you can use a word of your own choice, that is related to being a woman of color in the running space when, very often, I've talked about this a lot in regards to when I said I used to be an elite athlete. When I started this podcast, I was an elite athlete. And I very much said at that time, I was like, I understand. I am literally the definition of what most people think of when they think what a quote unquote real runner is, even though I strongly disagreed with that back then and strongly disagree with that now. But how have you handled that part? What do you have a moment where it like sunk into you of like, oh, I have to be a part of a trailblazing group here who are, making that representation known so others can follow in my footsteps? Is there like a moment that you really realized that that's kind of had to be a part of your role? And how has your relationship to that been since, of being one of those trailblazers?
I think the moments that definitely stand out is when I was a child and then also in college. And so when I was a child growing up, the biggest message that my parents and primarily my dad said was, the more you invest in your education, the more opportunities you're going to grow for yourself. Like, you are not going to be handed, you're not coming from the same position as everybody else,
Yep.
but that doesn't matter. You start where you are, you work hard where you are, you recognize where you're coming from in order to know where you're going to go, and keep working hard at it. So this was a message that my dad just instilled in me from early on. And I saw it in both my parents, their work ethic as immigrant parents. They worked hard. They would balance between 2 to 3 jobs, and just see them work around the clock to put food on the table. And it's like that modeling. That's kind of why I always want to be a role model, because when you can't teach motivation, you can inspire it. Mm-hmm. If you are doing it and you are living proof of it, then you can help empower somebody else and think, maybe I can do it too. And so that's what my parents did when they, every day of my childhood, I would see them work hard. And then the words that they would try to reinforce that message, like investing in yourself in your education is your investment in yourself. So I read every book that I could. I try to learn everything I can. And that's kind of how I just programmed myself, just to pour in as much as I could so that I can create opportunities and open doors in the future, because I knew they were limited from where I was starting. So then once I got into college and I went into UCLA, that's where I really, really had a hard awakening of being a woman, being of color, because I went to the sciences and I knew that I wanted to go either like it was engineering or it was in biology, just something. I wanted to be an astronaut. I just wanted to shoot for the stars. And, taking all of these classes in South Campus at UCLA, like I didn't see very many people that looked like me.
Sure.
And it's like, what? Well, it was really weird because I didn't have to go through that in middle school, high school, elementary school, because I still had a lot of Latinos around me. I still had, people that looked like me. I had to work hard still because I don't never consider myself as intelligent. I just worked hard. But then in college, it was just different. And I listened and I heard my dad messaging again. Doesn't matter where you're starting. You just keep working hard. You keep investing in yourself and create opportunities and represent for you, represent for the family, and represent for our culture. Remember where you're coming from. And that was a voice that I always heard in my mind. And it was right there in college. And so that helped translate once I got into sport again after grad school, because that's when I started getting into triathlon. And triathlon is it's quote unquote, it's like they call it the rich man sport, just like cycling. So it is very predominant white. And again, you see the very limited people around me competing. This is not professional. This is now recreational hobby. And you see people who don't look like me. I'm like, you know what? That's okay. Because if I can show that it's possible within myself, and I want to know people where I started from in order to get here, then it helps empower them to see that I can do that too. So that was always the messaging that I wanted to share with others, is that you can get here too, that it is within you, regardless of wherever you're starting. So that's kind of the 2 moments that helped me just translate it into the sport and say, I want to keep passing this message and saying, don't see yourself when you're a woman or when you're Latino or when you're a minority as a limitation, but see it as a form of a challenge maybe. And this is like, I can do it too.
And so what did it mean to you when you came across Latinos Run within the running community when Maria first, built that out? What did that mean to you?
I thought it was amazing how much that she was passing along that message, and it spread like nationwide. And she even shared too, I think it was either in Strava Camp this year or last year, when she said, she's like, I was shocked to think and to discover that it didn't exist before. Like, how did it not exist before? And how did nobody else think of it? And when she did, she helped kind of gather an internal sentiment that wasn't voiced yet. So that's the empowerment. It just takes one person to voice it out and say like, hey, yeah, you're right. Like, I am a Latino and you're a Latino. Like, we can run together and we can help encourage each other and stop trying to challenge each other and bring each other down, but help lift each other in numbers.
Yeah, no, it's been really amazing to see how quickly it grew, how widespread it grew, and just the community element that clearly means a lot and was needed and clearly appreciated very quickly. So the last thing I want to ask you about today is I mentioned at the beginning of the episode that you came along to my plugging event after the Chicago Marathon. And as I haven't had anyone on the podcast who I didn't know before and therefore had come to one of these to do me a favor because they're my friend, you showed up, you and I not knowing one another. I'm just curious, like, what was it about that made you think, you know what, I think I might go to that? And if you could share with the listeners about your experience or what you learned during that moment, because it's just interesting having someone there who didn't feel like they were bullied to go because I was like, come on, you can come along, but came from your own choice.
Well, it was a wonderful last minute invitation from my friends from Latinas in Chicago, Diana and Monica. Monica was in town from Florida and Diana was there in Chicago. And she said, hey, there's this event the next day. And I've heard of your name. And I was like, wait a minute, putting two and two together. Like, oh yeah, I have heard of her and I've heard of her book and I've heard of I've seen her speak. And I was like, yeah, of course I want to come. She's like, really? So it was like, first off, like, yeah, yeah, you know what? And I ended up changing my flight. I booked an extra night to come. So it was for two reasons. Like we wanted to hang out that Sunday night together. We went to go eat and hang out at this other event. And she's like, the next morning, then we can go ahead and go to the plugging event. And I flew out right after. That's where I was like, okay, that's where my flight was. So it was totally last minute and it was an immediate yes. So that was one. But two, the reason why it was an immediate yes is because, again, this goes back to with my dad. My dad is a huge environmentalist. He is about this planet and he is about hugging trees and recycling and not wasting. Probably a lot of it, now that I'm older, probably a lot of it started out because we were so poor early on. So recycling was big, reusing was big.
Very common in immigrant families being, mindful of your consumption, as we should all be. But yes, I've heard that many times.
Yes. But now it's like that we're comfortable. We're not rich. We're comfortable. Like if my parents are comfortable, I'm comfortable. But there's still a principle and morality of hey, let's do our part.
Yeah.
Let's still have a compost in the backyard. Let's still make sure we divide our recyclables and our trash. Do every little thing. Make sure that we're bringing our bags to the grocery store and not contributing. Make sure that we're reusing utensils that are reusable. Just little things that you can do that contribute. And in the grand scheme of things, the more and more we can make an impact. But it's more about internalizing and say, this little thing that I'm doing each and every day can make an impact. And if we can just model it and help encourage others to do that, hopefully it can make an impact. And it has to come from a place of love is where I've noticed. Because you can go ahead and scream on the top of your lungs. You can go ahead and be negative. No one's going to listen.
Yeah.
They're just going to block you out. But if you come from a place of peace, you come from a place of happiness, from love, people then are intrigued. And how do you do that in a world as chaotic that we live in today? There's a lot of noise out there, a lot. So that's why I think it's very important to take care of the internal dialogue that we have in ourselves and remember what message we want to pass along and what impact we want to pass along and how we want to leave this planet in a better, not worse. And that includes not only in how we're raising our children, but also the physicality of the earth itself. And so we have the power through our small actions every day.
Yes.
So that originated from my dad.
I love that so much. And that's so true. That's actually how I ended up doing what I was doing, because I felt like the environmental activists that I was seeing were too much you have to be a vegan, or the world is on fire. You need to we're all horrible humans. And I wanted to, I just figured there was no way people were going to listen if we were just kind of shaming them all the time. So, thank you for saying that. And then curious, going on the plug, what are some of the things that stand out in terms of what you noticed doing that?
I was shocked at the number of cigarette butts I found on the floor. It was insane. I didn't realize I don't see that many people smoke, but I picked up so many. I mean, my bag didn't feel that heavy, but it was just all those little cigarette butts.
It is.
That's what the biggest shock that I saw. I'm like, wow, okay. You need to be mindful of people. When you're smoking, if that's your choice, Just don't toss it on the ground.
Yeah, I have another friend who's a content creator, and he came to my one in Boston, Dan Churchill, and he he made a video afterwards and was like, "Look, if you're going to smoke, and don't do it, it's not good for you. But if you're going to, for the love of God, please throw your cigarette butts in the trash." Like, he just made this video that was so funny, but at the same time was very true and to the point. And like, just as you said, that's always the number one thing we pick up, and that's not what people think of when they think of doing those events. They see these big bags filled and think it's just big things, but it's mostly cigarette butts, unfortunately. And those are now made from plastic. So it's not, people think, oh, they're made from paper. They're not anymore. So, yeah, thank you so much for coming to that. Thank you for what you said there. And I love just, the messaging around just doing our bit ourselves. So to wrap up here, is there anything you'd like to share with the listeners, or you want to share with the community that, you haven't had a chance to cover yet?
You're beautiful. You're beautiful. I think we need to tell ourselves that on a more regular basis. I think when we wake up in the morning, there have been times in my life where I forget how strong or how beautiful I am in the inside.
Yeah.
And as we get older, sometimes we allow the external to define us, but we have to remind ourselves on the inside on how beautiful we are, how beautiful we can be, and continuously feed the beautiful side of ourselves.
So true. And as someone who is the parent of a 4 and 6-year-old right now, it is hard to do that sometimes. Like, sometimes I'm standing next to one of them with our faces next to each other, looking in the mirror. And I say to one of them, like, "Oh, you're just so beautiful," or like, "Look how sweet you are," or like, "I love looking at your face." And then I have to say to myself, "Okay, say it about yourself." So I'll be like, "Look at that beautiful girl." And I'm like, "Look at those two beautiful girls in the mirror." Because like, I know if I'm just saying it about them, it's not going in. And so like, it feels forced at times, but I know that then I'm giving them the permission to also look at themselves and have that sense of self. But it can be hard. Like, sometimes I feel like like I said, I have to almost take like a deep breath before saying it, because it just feels so alien. And as women, we're often told we shouldn't celebrate ourselves or say things like that, or we worry about being narcissistic or arrogant or whatever it might be. So I think that's an important message we all need more of.
Oh.
Yeah. So thank you. I have absolutely loved talking to you today. I appreciate all the good that you put out into the world. I'm so glad we've connected. And thank you for joining me. It's just been a true gift to have this time with you. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Sheena.
Before we go any further, I just want to give a quick shout out to the Running for Real team. Without them, I would not be able to do barely anything compared to what I'm able to do today. They are behind the scenes. They are there for me. I am just so appreciative of them. To Jeremy Nessel, our podcast editor, audio consultant, and someone who's been with me since the start. To Sally Pontarelli, our content and operations manager, who is there day to day doing all the things to help me be successful. To Kelsey Wang, our head of design, and Louise Murphy, our associate designer. And finally, to Sandy Gutierrez, our photographer and content strategist. I am appreciative of all of you and wouldn't be able to do what I do without you. I really enjoyed that conversation with Nadia. I hope you did too. I learned a lot. I thought about a lot. I reflected a lot after that episode. And I hope it gave you some nuggets to consider in your own life. I want to take a moment to remind you to go check out the links in the show notes by going to runningforreal.com/episode 426. You can also find links in there to our partners. Thank you to Runner. Thank you to Tracksmith. And thank you to AG1 for your support of me and the work that I do. You can get links at runningforreal.com/episode 426. Thank you for listening, my friends. I will see you next week.